Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stephen Ray Vaughan was an American musician, singer, songwriter, and record producer. In spite of a short-lived mainstream career spanning 7 years, he was an influential guitarist and one of the most important figures in the revival of blues in the 1980s. AllMusic describes him as a rocking powerhouse of a guitarist who gave blues a burst of momentum in the 80s, with influence still felt long after his tragic death. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas, Vaughan began playing guitar at the age of 7, inspired by his older brother Jimmie. In 1971 he dropped out of high school, and moved to Austin the following year. He played gigs with numerous bands, earning a spot in Marc Benno's band, the Nightcrawlers, and later with Denny Freeman in the Cobras, with whom he continued to work through late 1977. He then formed his own group, Threat Revue, before renaming the band Double Trouble after hiring drummer Chris Layton and bassist Tommy Shannon. He gained fame after his performance at the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1982, and in 1983 his debut studio album, Texas Flood, charted at number 38. The 10-song album was a commercially successful release that sold over 500,000 copies. After achieving sobriety in late 1986, he headlined concert tours with Jeff Beck in 1989 and Joe Cocker in 1990 before his death in a helicopter crash on August 27, 1990. At the age of 35, Vaughan was inspired musically by American and British blues rock. He favored clean amplifiers with high volume and contributed to the popularity of vintage musical equipment. He often combined several different amplifiers together and used minimal effects pedals. Chris Gill of Guitar World commented, "Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar tone was as dry as a San Antonio summer, and as sparkling clean as a Dallas debutante, the product of the natural sound of amps with ample clean headroom." However, Vaughan occasionally used pedals to augment his sound, mainly to boost the signal, although he occasionally employed a rotating speaker cabinet and wah pedals for added textural flair. Vaughan received several music awards during his lifetime and posthumously. In 1983, readers of Guitar Player voted him Best New Talent and Best Electric Blues Guitar Player. In 1984, the Blues Foundation named him Entertainer of the Year and Blues Instrumentalist of the Year. And in 1987, Performance magazine honored him with Rhythm and Blues Act of the Year, earning 6 Grammy Awards and 10 Austin Music Awards. He was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame in 2000, and the Musicians Hall of Fame in 2014. Rolling Stone ranked Vaughan as the 12th greatest guitarist of all time. In 2015, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Family and early life. Vaughan's ancestry has been traced back to his great-grandfather, Robert Hodgin LaRue. Robert LaRue had a daughter named Laura Bell, Vaughan's paternal grandmother. She married Thomas Lee Vaughan and moved to Rockwall County, Texas, where they lived by sharecropping. On September 6, 1921, they had a son named Jimmie Lee Vaughan. Steve's father, Jim Vaughan, also known as Big Jim, dropped out of school at age 16 and enlisted in the United States Navy during World War II. After his discharge, he married Martha Cook on January 13, 1950. Stephen Ray Vaughan was born on October 3, 1954. In Dallas, Texas. He was 3.5 years younger than his brother Jimmie. Big Jim secured a job as an asbestos worker, an occupation that involved rigorous manual effort. The family moved frequently, living in other states such as Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma before ultimately moving to the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. A shy and insecure boy, Vaughan was deeply affected by his childhood experiences. His father struggled with alcohol abuse, and often terrorized his family and friends with his bad temper. In later years, Vaughan recalled that he had been a victim of his father's violence. First instruments. In the early 1960s, Vaughan's admiration for his brother Jimmie resulted in him trying different instruments such as the drums and saxophone. In 1961, for his 7th birthday, Vaughan received his first guitar, a toy from Sears with Western motif. Learning by ear, he diligently committed himself, following along to songs by the Nightcaps, particularly Wine, Wine, Wine and Thunderbird. He listened to blues artists such as Albert King, Otis Rush, and Muddy Waters, and rock guitarists such as Jimi Hendrix and Lonnie Mac, as well as jazz guitarists including Kenny Burrell. In 1963, he acquired his first electric guitar, a Gibson S125T, as a hand-me-down from Jimmie. Soon after he acquired the electric guitar, Vaughan joined his first band, the Shantones. In 1965, their first gig was at a talent contest held in Darla's Hill Theatre. But after realizing that they could not perform a Jimmy Reed song in its entirety, Vaughan left the band and joined the Brooklyn Underground, playing professionally at local bars and clubs. He received Jimmie's Fender Broadcaster, which he later traded for an Epiphone Riviera. When Jimmie left home at age 16, Vaughan's apparent obsession with the instrument caused a lack of support from his parents. Miserable at home, he took a job at a local hamburger stand, where he washed dishes and dumped trash for 70 cents an hour. After falling into a barrel of grease, he grew tired of the job and quit to devote his life to a music career. Early years. In May 1969, after leaving the Brooklyn Underground, Vaughan joined a band called the Southern Distributor. He had learned the Yardbirds' Jeff's Boogie, and played the song at the audition. Mike Steinbach, the group's drummer, commented, "The kid was 14. We auditioned him on Jeff's Boogie, really fast instrumental guitar, and he played it note for note." Although they played pop-rock covers, Vaughan conveyed his interest in the addition of blues songs to the group's repertoire. He was told that he wouldn't earn a living playing blues music, and the band parted ways. Later that year, bassist Tommy Shannon walked into a Dallas club and heard Vaughan playing guitar. Fascinated by the skillful playing, which he described as incredible even then, Shannon borrowed a bass guitar and the two jammed. Within a few years, they began performing together in a band called Cracker Jack. In February 1970, Vaughan joined a band called Liberation, which was a 9-piece group with a horn section. Having spent the past month briefly playing bass with Jimmie in Texas Storm, he had originally auditioned as bassist. Impressed by Vaughan's guitar playing, Scott Fares, the group's original guitarist, modestly became the bassist. In mid-1970, they performed at the Adolphus Hotel in downtown Dallas, where ZZ Top asked them to perform. During Liberation's break, Vaughan jammed with ZZ Top on the Nightcaps song, Thunderbird. Fares later described the performance, "They tore the house down. It was awesome. It was one of those magical evenings. Stevie fit in like a glove on a hand." Attending Justin F. Kimball High School during the early 1970s, Vaughan's late-night gigs contributed to his neglect in his studies, including music theory. He would often sleep during class. His musical career pursuit was disapproved by many of the school's administrators, but he was also encouraged by many people to strive for a career in art. including his art teacher. In his sophomore year, he attended an evening class for experimental art at Southern Methodist University, but bailed when it conflicted with rehearsal. Vaughan later spoke of his dislike of the school and stated that he had to receive a daily note from the principal about his grooming. First recordings. In September 1970, Vaughan made his first studio recordings with the band Cast of Thousands, which included future actor Stephen Tobolowsky. They recorded 2 songs, Red, White and Blue and I Heard a Voice Last Night, for a compilation album, A New High, that featured various teenage bands from Dallas. In late January 1971, feeling confined by playing pop hits with Liberation, Vaughan formed his own band, Blackbird. After growing tired of the Dallas music scene, he dropped out of school and moved with the band to Austin, Texas, which had more liberal and tolerant audiences. There, Vaughan initially took residence at the Rolling Hills Country Club, a venue that would later become the Soap Creek Saloon. Blackbird played at several clubs in Austin and opened shows for bands such as Sugarloaf, Wishbone Ash, and Zephyr, but could not maintain a consistent lineup. In early December 1972, Vaughan left Blackbird and joined a rock band named Crackerjack. He performed with them for less than 3 months. In March 1973, Vaughan joined Marc Benno's band, the Nightcrawlers, after meeting Benno at a jam session years before. The band featured vocalist Doyle Bramhall, who met Vaughan when he was 12 years old. The next month, the Nightcrawlers recorded an album at Sunset Sound Recorders in Hollywood for A&M Records. While the album was rejected by A&M, it included Vaughan's first songwriting efforts, Dirty Pool and Crawlin'. Soon afterward, he and the Nightcrawlers traveled back to Austin without Benno. In mid-1973, they signed a contract with Bill Ham, manager for ZZ Top, and played various gigs across the South. Though many of them were disastrous, Ham left the band stranded in Mississippi without any way to make it back home and demanded reimbursement from Vaughan for equipment expenses. Ham was never reimbursed. In 1975, Vaughan joined a 6-piece band called Paul Ray and the Cobras that included guitarist Denny Freeman and saxophonist Joe Sublette. For the next 2.5 years, he earned a living performing weekly at a popular venue in town, the Soap Creek Saloon, and ultimately the newly opened Antones, widely known as Austin's home of the blues. In late 1976, Vaughan recorded a single with them, Other Days, as the A-side and Texas Clover as the B-side, playing guitar on both tracks. The single was released on February 7, 1977. In March, readers of the Austin Sun voted them as Band of the Year. In addition to playing with the Cobras, Vaughan jammed with many of his influences at Antones, including Buddy Guy, Hubert Sumlin, Jimmie Rodgers, Lightnin' Hopkins, and Albert King. Vaughan toured with the Cobras during much of 1977, but near the end of September, after they decided to strive for a mainstream musical direction, he left the band and formed Threat Revue, which included singer Lou Ann Barton, bassist W.C. Clark, and drummer Fred Ifero. In January 1978, they recorded 4 songs in Austin, including Vaughan's composition, I'm Cryin'. The 30-minute audio recording marks the only known studio recording of the band. Stevie recorded an album that has never officially been released, first unreleased album 1978. Liner notes read, "The one and only surviving test pressing was discovered in a cupboard in Austin, Texas, where it had lain for 19 years. All other recordings of the project have been destroyed after alleged contractual disputes arose. These recordings, notable for their raw energy and rare slide guitar work, are essential for all true collectors. Also featuring 4 early arrangements of songs that later appeared on the Texas Flood album. Due to the brevity of the Nashville '78 session, the producers have added a live soundboard recording featuring Luann Barton and 3 tracks featuring Johnny Reno on saxophone. Notes: the above paragraph is the supposed story behind this recording as told on the CD inlay. The real story is that the band didn't like the way the album turned out, and paid a large sum of money to keep it from being released. As you would expect, someone got their hands on a copy and bootlegged it. Tracks 110, studio recordings recorded in Nashville, Tennessee, at Jack Clement's Belmont Studio, early 1978. Stevie Vaughan vocals, guitar Jack Newhouse, bass Chris Layton, drums Luann Barton, vocals produced by Joe Gracie. Tracks 11-17, Austin Blues Festival, 1979. Tracks 18-20, Pianos, October 1979. Stevie Vaughan vocals, guitar Jack Newhouse, bass Freddie Pharaoh Walden, drums Johnny Reno, tenor sax Luann Barton, vocals. There is a version of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Luann Barton doing a cover of Slim Harpo's Teeny Nanny New on that album. In the Beginning is a live album by Stevie Vaughan and Double Trouble. While the album was released about 2 years after Vaughan's death in 1990, the actual performance took place on April 1, 1980 at Steamboat 1874 in Austin, Texas, and was broadcast live on KLBJ-FM radio. A 25-year-old Vaughan, still more than 3 years away from the release of his first studio album, performs with his Double Trouble bandmates, Chris Layton, drummer, and Jackie Newhouse, bassist. The record sat in a drawer at KLBJ Studios for 12 years. Supposedly no one liked it much because it was very raw sounding. Double Trouble. In mid-May 1978, Clark left to form in his own group and Vaughan renamed the band Double Trouble, taken from the title of an Otis Rush song. Following the recruitment of bassist Jackie Newhouse, Pharaoh quit in July, and was briefly replaced by Jack Moore, who had moved to Texas from Boston. He performed with the band for about 2 months. Vaughan then began looking for a drummer, and soon after, he met Chris Layton through Sublet, who was his roommate. Layton, who had recently parted ways with Greasy Wheels, was taught by Vaughan to play a shuffle rhythm. When Vaughan offered Layton the position, he agreed. In early July, Vaughan befriended Lenora Bailey, known as Lenny, who became his girlfriend and ultimately his wife. The marriage was to last for 6.5 years. In early October 1978, Vaughan and Double Trouble earned a frequent residency performing at one of Austin's most popular night spots, the Roman. During a performance, Edie Johnson, an accountant at Manor Downs, noticed Vaughan. She remembered, "I'm not an authority on music, it's whatever turned me on, but this did." She recommended him to Manor Downs owner Francis Carr and general manager Chesley Milliken, who was interested in managing artists, and saw Vaughan's musical potential. After Barton quit Double Trouble in mid-November 1979, Milliken signed Vaughan to a management contract. Vaughan also hired Robert Cutter Brandenburg as road manager, whom he had met in 1969. Addressing him as Stevie Ray, Brandenburg convinced Vaughan to use his middle name on stage. In October 1980, bassist Tommy Shannon attended a Double Trouble performance at Rockefeller's in Houston. Shannon, who was playing with Alan Haynes at the time, participated in a jam session with Vaughan and Layton halfway through their set. Shannon later commented, "I went down there that night, and I'll never forget this. It was like, when I walked in the door and I heard them playing, it was like a revelation. That's where I want to be. That's where I belong." Right there, during the break, I went up to Stevie and told him that I didn't try to sneak around and hide it from the bass player, Jackie Newhouse. I didn't know if he was listening or not. I just really wanted to be in the band. I sat in that night and it sounded great. Almost 3 months later, when Vaughan offered Shannon the position, he readily accepted. Montreux Jazz Festival. Although popular in Texas at the time, Double Trouble failed to gain national attention. The group's luck progressed when record producer Jerry Wexler recommended them to Claude Nobbs, organizer of the Montreux Jazz Festival. He insisted that the festival's blues night would be great, with Vaughan, whom he called a jewel, one of those rarities who comes along once in a lifetime. And Nobbs agreed to book Double Trouble on July 17. Vaughan opened with a medley arrangement of Freddie King's song, "Hide Away," and his own fast instrumental composition, "Rude Mood." Double Trouble went on to perform renditions of Larry Davis's "Texas Flood," Hound Dog Taylor's "Give Me Back My Wig," and Albert Collins' "Collins Shuffle," as well as 3 original compositions, "Pride and Joy," "Love Struck Baby," and "Dirty Pool." The set ended with boos from the audience. People's James McBride wrote, according to road manager Don Opperman, "The way I remember it, the oohs and the boos were mixed together, but Stevie was pretty disappointed. Stevie had just handed me his guitar and walked off stage, and I'm like, 'Are you coming back?' There was a doorway back there, the audience couldn't see the guys, but I could. He went back to the dressing room with his head in his hands. I went back there finally, and that was the end of the show." According to Vaughan, it wasn't the whole crowd that booed. It was just a few people sitting right up front. The room there was built for acoustic jazz. When 5 or 6 people boo, wow. It sounds like the whole world hates you. They thought we were too loud, but shoot. I had 4 army blankets folded over my amp, and the volume level was on 2. I'm used to play in on 10. The performance was filmed and later released on DVD in September 2004. On the following night, Double Trouble was booked in the lounge of the Montreux Casino, with Jackson Browne in attendance. Browne jammed with Double Trouble until the early morning hours, and offered them free use of his personal recording studio in downtown Los Angeles. In late November the band accepted his offer and recorded 10 songs in 2 days. While they were in the studio, Vaughan received a telephone call from David Bowie, who met him after the Montreux performance, and he invited him to participate in a recording session for his next studio album, Let's Dance. In January 1983, Vaughan recorded guitar on 6 of the album's 8 songs, including the title track and China Girl. The album was released on April 14, 1983 and sold over 3 times as many copies as Bowie's previous album. National success. In mid-March 1983, Greg Eller, vice president of A&R at Epic Records, signed Double Trouble to the label at the recommendation of record producer John Hammond. Soon afterward, Epic financed a music video for "Love Struck Baby," which was filmed at the Cherry Tavern in New York City. Vaughan recalled, "We changed the name of the place in the video. 4 years ago I got married in a club where we used to play all the time called the Roam Inn. When they closed it down, The owner gave me the sign, so in the video we put that up behind me on the stage. With the success of Let's Dance, Bowie requested Vaughan as the featured instrumentalist for the upcoming Serious Moonlight tour. Realizing that he was an essential aspect of the album's groundbreaking success, in late April, Vaughan began rehearsals for the tour in Las Colinas, Texas. When contract renegotiations for his performance fee failed, Vaughan abandoned the tour days before its opening date, and he was replaced by Earl Slick. Vaughan commented, "I couldn't gear everything on something I didn't really care a whole lot about. It was kind of risky, but I really didn't need all the headaches." Although contributing factors were widely disputed, Vaughan soon gained major publicity for quitting the tour. On May 9, the band performed at the Bottom Line in New York City, where they opened for Bryan Adams, with Hammond, Mick Jagger, John McEnroe, Rick Nielsen, Billy Gibbons, and Johnny Winter in attendance. Brandenburg described the performance as ungodly. "I think Stevie played every lick as loud and as hard and with as much intensity as I've ever heard him." The successful performance earned Vaughan a positive review published in the New York Post, asserting that Double Trouble outperformed Adams. Fortunately, Bryan Adams, the Canadian rocker who is opening arena dates for Journey, doesn't headline too often, wrote Martin Porter, who claimed that after the band's performance, the stage had been rendered to cinders by the most explosively original showmanship to grace the New York stage in some time. Texas flood. After acquiring the recordings from Brown's studio, Double Trouble began assembling the material for a full-length LP. The album, Texas Flood, opens with the track, Love Struck Baby, which was written for Lenny on their Love Struck Day. He composed Pride and Joy and I'm Crying for one of his former girlfriends, Lindy Bethel, and are both musically similar, but the lyrics are two different perspectives of their prior relationship. Along with covers of Howlin' Wolf, the Isley Brothers, and Buddy Guy, the album included Vaughan's cover of Larry Davis's Texas Flood, a song which he became strongly associated with. Lenny served as a tribute to his wife, which he composed at the end of their bed. Texas Flood featured cover art by illustrator Brad Holland, who was known for his artwork for Playboy and the New York Times. Originally envisioned with Vaughan sitting on a horse depicting a promotable resemblance, Holland painted an image of him leaning against a wall with a guitar, using a photograph as a reference. Released on June 13, 1983, Texas Flood peaked at number 38, and ultimately sold 500,000 copies. While Rolling Stone editor Kurt Loder asserted that Vaughan did not possess a distinctive voice, according to AllMusic senior editor Stephen Thomas Erlewine, the release was a monumental impact. Billboard described it as a guitar boogie lover's delight. Agent Alex Hodges commented, "No one knew how big that record would be, because guitar players weren't necessarily in vogue, except for some that were so established they were undeniable." He was one of the few artists that was recouped on every record in a short period of time. On June 16, Vaughan gave a performance at Tango nightclub in Dallas, which celebrated the album's release. Assorted VIPs attended the performance, including Ted Nugent, Sammy Hagar, and members of the Kinks and Uriah Heep. Jack Chase, vice president of marketing for Epic, recalled, "The coming out party at Tango was very important, it was absolutely huge. All the radio station personalities, VJs, program directors, all the retail record store owners, and the important managers, press, all the executives from New York came down, about 700 people. We attacked in Dallas first with Q102 FM. and DJ Redbeard. We had the tango party, it was hot. It was the ticket. The Dallas Morning News reviewed the performance, starting with the rhetorical question, what if Stevie Ray Vaughan had an album release party? And everybody came. It happened Thursday night at Tango. The adrenaline must have been gushing through the musicians' veins as they performed, with rare finesse and skill. Following a brief tour in Europe, Hodges arranged an engagement for Double Trouble as the Moody Blues opening act during a 2-month tour of North America. Hodges stated that many people disliked the idea of Double Trouble opening for the Moody Blues, but asserted that a common thread that both bands shared was album-oriented rock. Shannon described the tour as glorious. Our record hadn't become that successful yet, but we were playing in front of coliseums full of people. We just went out and played, and it fit like a glove. The sound rang through those big coliseums like a monster. People were going crazy, and they had no idea who we were. After appearing on the television series Austin City Limits, the band played a sold-out concert at New York City's Beacon Theatre. Variety wrote that their 90-minute set at the Beacon left no doubt that this young Texas musician is indeed the guitar hero of the present era. Couldn't stand the weather. In January 1984, Double Trouble began recording their second studio album, Couldn't Stand the Weather, at the Power Station, with John Hammond as executive producer and engineer Richard Mullen. Layton later recalled working with Hammond. He was kind of like a nice hand on your shoulder, as opposed to someone that jumped in and said, let's redo this, let's do that more. He didn't get involved in that way at all. He was a feedback person. As the sessions began, Vaughan's cover of Bob Geddon's Tin Pan Alley was recorded while audio levels were being checked. Layton remembers the performance. We did probably the quietest version we ever did up till that point. We ended it, and Hammond said, that's the best that song will ever sound, and we went, we haven't even got sounds, have we? He goes, that doesn't matter. That's the best you'll ever do that song. We tried it again 5, 6, 7 times, I can't even remember. But it never quite sounded like it did that first time. During recording sessions, Vaughan began experimenting with other combinations of musicians, including Fran Christina and Stan Harrison, who play drums and saxophone respectively on the jazz instrumental, Stang's Swang. Jimmie Vaughan played rhythm guitar on his cover of Guitar Slim's The Things That I Used to Do, and the title track, the latter of which Vaughan carries a worldly message in his lyrics. According to musicologist Andy Aladort, Vaughan's guitar playing throughout the song is marked by steady rhythmic strumming patterns and improvised lead lines, with a distinctive R&B and soul single-note riff, doubled in octaves by guitar and bass. Couldn't Stand the Weather was released on May 15, 1984, and 2 weeks later it had rapidly outpaced the sales of Texas Flood. It peaked at number 31, and spent 38 weeks on the charts. The album includes Vaughan's cover of Jimi Hendrix's song, Voodoo Child, which provoked inevitable comparisons to Hendrix. According to AllMusic editor Stephen Thomas Erlewine, Couldn't Stand the Weather confirmed that the acclaimed debut was no fluke, while matching, if not bettering, the sales of its predecessor, thereby cementing Vaughan's status as a giant of modern blues. According to authors Joe Nick Patosky and Bill Crawford, the album was a major turning point in Stevie Ray Vaughan's development, and Vaughan's singing improved. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.